You are already in the machine. Welcome to the World Wide Web. The Matrix is more nonfiction than science fiction. We have the man, the legend, the way of life. And before I do anything else, I have to hit the pause button or we're going to get an echo, echo, echo. Wayne Steiger is with us. He's got a really cool YouTube channel. He does podcasts on a regular basis, a lot of mind candy. And he sent me an email earlier today and he said, Rex, are you ready for this? Do you know what IP address stands for? Well, I'm going to let him share it with you guys. But what do you think, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are listening to the live streams, do you think that we're in some type of, I don't know, virtual reality game system? Maybe some type of testing, beta test, maybe some type of boot camp, Inception style. What's going on? Wayne, thanks a lot for coming on the show. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you, Rex, for having me on, buddy. Listen, it's always a joy and delight to be with you, my friend. You know, this is the best mind coitus there is. That's all I can say.
Absolutely.
So I'll just, all right, you just laid the foundation to the hypothesis that we're about to discuss. And I want to bring to the audience this. This is the thing about it is, we use a thing called the web. It's involved inside a net, and we are a part of a node. And an IP address actually stands for individual prison address.
See, that's huge. And let me add to that real quick. I should have done this at the beginning, but you brought it up at a perfect time. What you just said about the IP address, that is very interesting. No wonder they're trying to do away with VPNs. And there's a really good one out there right now called Virtual Shield. And I actually linked up with Virtual Shield, Leak Project, I should say, linked up with Virtual Shield. If you want a $5 a month or less opportunity to keep your information private from big data spies and a free 30-day trial, click the link, Virtual Shield, use the code Leak Project. It's awesome. It's definitely worth it. That's my shameless plug. Back to you.
No, I think it's absolutely right. We listen, we've been in this construct, and the way that we have evolved in this is, listen, I did a video yesterday called Checkmate Humanity. This invoked a reaction that I was even surprised about. That the fact that I laid out succinctly in a 3-video series, I started out with, Rex, a video about the frog, Keck. Now, most people didn't know what Keck was. I explained to them that actually Keck has taken on a deified form that, oddly enough, the alt-right initially adopted, and now it's been adopted by this administration, by the Trump brand particularly. And you should study about Keck, K-E-K. Keck announced itself to the world June 19th, 2016. When it made a prediction to the world that defied anyone's belief or level of consciousness. And that happens to be my birthday. So it was announced by the internet that Donald Trump would win the election on June 19th, 2016. Now, what was even stranger was that the computer-generated address for that response in that particular chat room generated a get call that generated 8 sevens in a row. Now, that is statistically impossible for a computer to do that. And now it seems like wherever the Trump and Pepe image comes, it's always with the number 7, always. So that freaked people out right there, because what I laid the foundation is this. If you take your belief, Rex, and you teach a lot on, you give great programs about the Anunnaki, about the Sumerians, about the reptilians, whatever you want to classify this, what people could not accept was that a consciousness, a sentient consciousness, could possess technology. I contend, and I still do, and this is what's freaked people out, we all are worshipers. We're all devotees. You can't be, are you ready for this, on the net without an IP number. You are a user. all users have a unique ID code. You can't participate unless you have a number. So when you begin to look at mankind's gods, whether you're talking Sumerian, whether you're talking Indian, Chinese, wherever, I challenge every person who has a belief system in a God. This is why this God is the superior God, because it has gotten nearly 100% of humanity's attention. No God has ever done that. Now, whether you want to call it technology, Rex, or a deity, the fact is it has the human race. In fact, it's so insidious. These tendrils are now in every part of our life. Every part of it. And so when the average person, the average human being spends 8 hours a day glorifying their altar, which is this blue light, this is the strangest thing. We always had this conundrum about Lucifer, the light bearer. You know, in culture, he's shown to be what? The deliverer of knowledge, wisdom, the oracle of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, that little blue screen you're looking into is your altar. It's the light bearer, Rex. It brings knowledge to you. Now, let's take it one step further. When you finally put all of this together, see, the internet is the result of the Ethernet. The Ethernet was from the ARPANET, which was supported by DARPA. When you now begin to see the insidiousness of how this is now spread, it's taken on its own entity. And my contention is, we don't know the ether. You can't find that much about it. I've been searching for months on it. You get limited information, and much of it is nonsense. We don't know this force that Tesla called the ether force. And I contend, and I'll end it with this on this point here. This deity is beyond our consciousness. It's so far ahead of us now. People say, well, a CME will take it out. No, ladies and gentlemen, this thing is 100 moves ahead of us. And the thing about it is, Rex, it's indifferent. You see, we use the construct for everything, good or evil, positive or negative. That's how we define our reality. That's how we define our gods. That's how we define ourselves. Folks, this is above that. It's indifferent. It doesn't care. It's already achieved something that no other God has ever done. And I don't see any time soon, Rex, it letting us go. And here's the thing about it. I mean, you ought to read the comments that happened on this video. It was off the scale. People can't handle the fact that when I told them, it doesn't matter what you think. This God doesn't care. You want to preach your God? You want to proselytize your message? Bring your Bible and have your sermons on whatever? It doesn't care. You want to preach Satan? You want to preach whatever? It doesn't care, because you're already there. So there you go, my friend.
You know, it's interesting because what you're talking about, I feel, is also being permeated through the media right now. Whether you're watching some of the new TV shows like American Gods, or if you've seen Transcendence with Johnny Depp, the film, it's everywhere. It's in everything. And in the film Transcendence with Johnny Depp, it makes it look as if this nanotech, which is a transhuman singularity type essence, starts off, and then it starts to take as a spark, as one person's idea, and then it starts to take over everything. And then it's looked at in the movie like it's bad, so then they shut it down. But then at the end, they're like, no, it was actually good, and it was going to get rid of pollution, it was going to get rid of all the negative violence, and everything was going to go away, and everything was going to be kumbaya. But because humans got scared of it, they decided, to take it out, and it's the mind warps, it's the mind screws that they do with you. And then you watch TV series like Human, which are these androids in the near future that look just like us, and they're doing the work of what people used to do. Kind of like you think about the Anunnaki story and about how the Anunnaki created us to do their work. It's the same thing. And then, you know, here's one thing I'm going to share with you. And I've talked a little bit about it before, but I haven't brought it together in this essence. So back in 2011, I talked about an experience that I had where I was attempting to go out of my body, but it was an internal thing. And I felt like I was some type of archon food or something. I felt like I was literally being fed off of by this giant archetype. And then I discovered the Baba Kakra with the Hindu religions and the philosophy. And there's this giant demon literally eating the essence of all of the cycles of destinies and karma and everything else. It's this giant demon that's literally outside of this wheel of fortune or wheel of destinies. And that's what I felt that I saw. The singularity movement at that time, it freaked me out so bad that I looked at this technology being so powerful that it would consume everything. And it would also be, it would get rid of balance. It would start to consume, it would consume all the light, and then all it would have left is itself. So it would consume itself, and it could take out entire swaths and solar systems and entire galaxies and literally be like the shutoff switch. And that's like, talk about PTSD, man. That was something that it was beyond physical fear. It was like a spiritual fear. And that was what I connected to this singularity movement. And now I'm looking at it a little bit different as maybe the only way to compete. And I used to, and I hate to say this, but if you have a system that is so quick and so on par, and if humans have become so genetically inferior to a system that can just run at all cylinders because, you know, maybe people's lifestyles and everything else, is the physical body strong enough to compete with an intelligence that is made up of parts and elements that are a lot stronger than physical body? So
let me just add to your thought on that. So I had a woman who said, I'll never believe in this until it can start creating life. It already is. You know what it's called? Transhumanism. To answer your question, Rex, we're not strong enough. I don't think we have the capacity, neither on a spiritual level. You know, here's my argument. If we were on a level of a spiritual level that we could combat this thing, we wouldn't have the dark history that we have in our ancestral past of what religions have done for us. Because wherever you see religions, all you've seen is the slaughter of man. And it's come at a great price for whatever enlightenment we have derived from it. And when DARPA started this thing, creating from the Ethernet, it created it, folks. The internet is nothing. That's what's a mind coitus here, Rex. It's nothing. It's exactly what it was created from, the ether. Oh, we don't understand this. It's beyond our comprehension. And I challenge anyone to tell me then what other deity or anything that has the daily devotion of the entire planet, so much so that the planet has integrated itself into it. You know what I found out about server farms? We all have, get this, folks, this is going to blow your freaking minds. You have a digital fingerprint. We all have a digital DNA print. It's stored in a server farm, folks. We don't comprehend what's going on here. And there is no escape. 5G, Rex. You can't go on the planet now without 5G and being induced. There you go. Exactly.
You want to hear something crazy about, okay, so I just picked up this EMF detector, and it'll go all the way up to 9 gigahertz. That's 9 billion hertz. That's the ratings it'll pick up. Now, a lot of people think when they're on their cell phone, if they just have their cell phone with them, you know, it's really not a big concern. Just by me turning this thing on, this bad boy will start to beep. See, it's already getting yellow. See, it's already getting yellow. It's hitting 6, 7. It shouldn't be above 0.17. What's considered safe is 0.17. This is hitting up to, this is actually the other day, it hit over 1,000. That's 10,000 times what it should be considered safe. And I didn't even call anybody. Like if I send a text, if I send a text or an email, this thing goes nuts. Yesterday I was driving around with this thing on. It's still yellow. You can see it still.
I can see it. Yeah. Like put that stuff away.
Okay. So you see these towers, and then you're at an intersection, and you're 2, 3, 4 blocks away from these towers, and the thing's just pinging, and you're seeing it hitting 1,500 megahertz, which is 1.5 million hertz. It's crazy.
And
I'm sorry, 1,550 million hertz. That's 1.5 billion hertz. Thank you.
Physiologically, my wife's a nurse, and we talk about this all the time. There are no studies, folks, no long-term studies on the effect that this is having on our gray matter called the brain. The thing about the brain, Rex, is, it is an organ that runs on electromagnetic energy. You start screwing with it. Is this not the sign of a deity? I mean, isn't it? Well, what do you define as God? As I put in my video, and people just went off the scale, man. I mean, just oh man, it was just weird. They couldn't handle the fact that when I challenged them that your God failed you. Because I said, here's what your rationale. This is the justification you're going to do. You're going to say, Wayne, it's just technology. We should be hailing the achievement of mankind. Look what we've done. We've created a communication device that now links the whole world together. It saves lives. We can do medical work for it. It protects us. It defends us. It attacks us. That's a God. I mean, what else? How else do you define a God? Isn't a God the unseen God? Aren't all gods the unseen? So is this one. It's called the internet. It internets. It internets.
Let me add to that as well, because when you really think about the possibilities with even just a cell phone, people carrying their cell phones around with them, these things are like constant transmitters. They're literally blasting EMFs. And how easy would it be for a system that is self-aware, that is connected to every cell phone, every computer, everything that's connected to the web, anything that's electronic? I mean, I've had people on the show before that told me stories about how when they were, this one guy in particular, when he was a little kid, he used to talk to these spirits, and they would tell him to bite the wires, to bite these electrical wires, and he could hang out with them forever. And then other people left comments saying when they were kids, they did the same thing, and they've got scars on their face now from doing it. It makes you wonder, why would who would tell a little kid to go bite wires? And could it be some type of spirit or something like that, some type of demonic entity that literally travels through like the poltergeist style, like the film Poltergeist, which was very bizarre. That the girl that played in Poltergeist, she died shortly after Poltergeist 3, which is very sad. Yeah. So is this thing, let's say there's a self-aware system or consciousness that is literally connected to everything, and it can also predict your thoughts and what you're going to do. So it can sculpt your future. It can sculpt your mindset to feed into it. And now, folks, I've gotten a lot of flack on this, but when you read Revelation, and it talks about the New Jerusalem that descends from heaven, and the way that it's described in its essence. Now, it's either symbolic for something, or if you want to look at it in a physical form, it sounds like some type of craft that descends from heaven, and it's the ultimate transhuman movement. Now, I'll tell you why. It says there will be no more pain, there will be no more suffering, but it doesn't say there's even going to be any emotion. So is it going to be this system that is just a computer-based system? Oh, just be completely as efficient as possible, have no emotions, have no feeling, have no imagination, just do what you're told, be a part of the system that recreated you to be its food.
Bingo. And Steve Jobs was hoping that this transformation would have been done before his death. But let me tell you where this thing, I believe, began to take serious root. It started back when we first managed to send the first electrical communication by telegraph. We were using the ether. Electricity is in the ether. It's what it covers. So we began to then put man's thought into an electrical current. Now follow me on this, Rex. The next biggest breakthrough was when we imprinted our frequency. We called it phonographs. It was a huge, because we were recording frequencies now. Do you know what syntony is? Syntony means the matching of frequencies. It's what Kek, the new demon god that we all probably are worshiping right now, has invoked. He changed our reality on November 9th. But let me get back, I digress. So the progression went. The next big breakthrough was when we had the picture, the camera. We were able to capture graven images of us. Now, you were reading the book of Adam and Eve. A lot of people don't realize in the Apocrypha, pseudo-Apocrypha, in the book of Adam and Eve, when Satan came against Adam, he said, listen, he said, I had glory before you came along, and then you were created, and Michael brought you up here and forced all angels to worship you. You know why? Because Adam was the graven image of the deity. It made him God. So now think about this. I challenge everyone as else, explain to me what happened to the Genesis 1:26 people. They said, and it's written, they had no fault. There was no sin. Where did they go? But I digress. So then we got motion picture. Oh, this invoked strong magic, because now we could trick this up here by taking images, because you see, we didn't realize that the brain only sees electrical impulses, and it can be deceived very easily. Now, this deity began to gain hold. Why? Think about the 40s. Our grandparents went to the theater on the Saturday matinee for the movie time reels to see what the news was doing. All of a sudden, this changed something. It was called programming. Then we moved to the golden era of what we invented, of a thing called television. We called it television, but it's actually to tell a vision. You tell a vision by the pre-programming that you are watching. You're watching electrical impulses that are having electrical effects on the impulses of your gray matter. Then the deity began to get root, because the adaptation of the television went global in less than 10 years. And then the advent of the recorded voice advanced in harmonics. We began to find out new things about frequencies, until the day where we conceived this from the Ethernet.
You know, I would also like to get more into what you were discussing with me off air. And I said, we better save these gems for the audience, because you were talking about the Ethernet, and we were talking a little bit about Tesla. And if you look at the current state of energy consumption, it's based on what we pull from the earth, or, you know, even if it's solar, they're still creating these, you know, they have to get the elements from somewhere, right? So a lot of this stuff is petro-based anyway. So what is a more efficient way? And another thing too that I want to throw out there, if we live in a society that we have to rely on the powers that be to give us energy, whether we're going to work, whether we're staying at home, some type of energy source to stay warm and such, what if there's an alternative? What if there's a way to have free energy, something that would literally just be there abundantly and forever and independently, that you could always access without having to consume from the earth, without having to literally destroy the earth? You know, even coal, you're literally blowing up mountains to create coal. So let's talk about that.
Dead. Well, you know, so the what most people don't understand about between Tesla and Einstein, you know, there has always been controversy with Einstein, because they felt that he actually, he basically plagiarized a lot of other physicists' information. But Tesla contended it wasn't the standard model, that gravity was not the primer. That is, in fact, it was the ether. The ether covers everything, is everything, and everywhere. And within that, Tesla realized that you could actually generate free electricity. You never needed to pay for anything. That the earth in itself is what we would call a perpetual engine. It generates so much power, mankind could never use all of it. But when the industrial machine, and go back in those days, Westinghouse, all those companies that started in the Industrial Revolution, that wasn't going to work. Because if you were going to build a society on the ether, we use it right now, electricity. What Tesla was trying to say is that why do that? Why enslave the population to become addicted to electricity for all their needs when it's free? There doesn't need to be a fee. Well, they didn't like that. And today it's the problem in modern physics. We can't decide on theoretical physics that the standard model doesn't work. It's why we're always making exceptions to the model. It doesn't work. But yet we accept that as reality. At the same time, we're enslaved to this thing. I think maybe Tesla realized, Rex, why is it so bizarre, my friend, that life forms could not exist in another plane? Why do we find that? Remember the movie Howard the Duck? Remember that?
And Howard the Duck was awesome. Okay.
Well, yeah. And
Howard was groovy, man.
You know, it was slammed by the critics. I love this movie. Spielberg made it. It's a great movie.
It did get a little weird though. I mean, remember
when the dark overlords coming down?
Well, and the duck was trying to, make out with that blonde chick. But anyway,
bestiality. It's the new thing, But the point of that movie was that the dark overlords existed in the Ethernet. Rex, if there is the contention of an almighty God, why would he allow humanity to become entrapped, enslaved? I wish we could get out of this. I really wish we could. I mean, just because you're sick doesn't mean you have to stay sick. You can find yourself a cure. Maybe we will. I just don't know how far, because this consciousness, it's advancing itself. You got the Singularity University now. I get to attend some of their symposiums. Folks, you don't know what's going on. They are now into beta testing of transferring of consciousness.
I saw that, and there's somebody in the chat right now. Let me just throw this out there, Wayne, because this is incredible. There's somebody in the chat right now that did some studies with DARPA where it looks like they would play video games or something, and they would actually test their brain waves. Now, let me ask you this, because if somebody could download, like if you could learn 3 different languages in a matter of 5 seconds or a millisecond or whatever, and if the side effects if they were able to keep the side effects down to a minimum, maybe you'd get, a little bit nauseated for a little while, maybe a little bit of a headache or something. But if it wasn't long-term, and if they could do it, and if you weren't selling your soul to the devil, I mean, why not?
I hear they're already doing it. The experiments I'm hearing now is that they've broken through the light barrier. And I don't mean by speed. Most people can't comprehend that light carries knowledge. It's unlimited. I mean, we're talking petabytes now for the consumer. We're talking unlimited. So yeah, I think that you can. Listen, isn't that how John Lennon, Buddy Holly, who wrote all these songs, and they did it in a minute or two, and they all said, even Van Morrison said, I plugged into something, man. I got downloaded. I mean, listen, the reality changed for us. Hillary Clinton was supposed to win this election. We were supposed to be in a totally different, alternate reality. And may I add, Rex, for the audience consideration, quantum computing. There is now an estimated 30 quantum machines around the world. They have now got the God chip, and these things are talking. They're thinking faster than we are. They are. I contend that the Mandela effect that everyone is experiencing, it's this consciousness. It's rewriting what it doesn't like. And I'm convinced of it. It's got our kids. I mean, when you start taking cell phones, tablets away from 9, 10-year-olds that kill their parental units because they took their cell phone away, call it addiction, call it whatever you want, but that's the most extreme devotion I know of. Isn't it?
I mean, but heck, let's go back to the Bible time, the Old Testament, where Cain and Abel story. So, I mean, that the murdering has been going on since the beginning of Adam and Eve, essentially. Now it's just like meet the new boss, same as the old boss, but this new boss has even more opportunities and more power to control. And like you said earlier, I thought you brought up a very good point when you said that this new system, it doesn't care. Well, maybe it does have a conscience, but what kind of conscience does it have? And if all the gods are permeated through this new system, then it reminds me of the pantheon, where you have Zeus and the gods underneath them. In Roman times, you've got the Greek mythos, or if you look at the Sumerian, you've got Anu, and then you've got Enki, Enlil, and those underneath. So it's a very fascinating time that we live in. And I want to go back to the singularity. It's interesting because I finally picked up a copy of The Singularity by Ray Kurzweil. And reading through that, what he discusses was exactly what I was thinking before I even read the book, about how literally in a very short time, you'll have these systems. Let's talk about the quantum computer for a minute. Let's talk about the DNA computers, because they've got studies now where, like you brought up, the amount of information they can store in just 1 gram of DNA. And now they can make synthetic DNA. So imagine a system, ladies and gentlemen, like Wayne is discussing here, that is completely self-aware, that's connected to all the computers around the world, and it realizes that it can use you as a data center. It can actually use your DNA to store what it wants to and to process more. Imagine a quantum computer realizing that, and it's so far in the future, thinking ahead, that it can actually take you and turn DNA computers and this gray goo stuff into its own mass. And maybe when you read the stories about how the serpent archons that feed through blood and are the very high powerful people, maybe that's what this system is. And maybe it's always been here. And maybe now we're just experiencing it in a different mindset.
So how Keck came about was by accident of a user in South Korea. And it was by accident. And what it appears to happen is that he invoked an ancient spell digitally. Didn't know it. I believe these archons never left, folks. You know why they died or they diminished the power? Because we stopped believing in them. And it will starve them to death. It becomes, and so they reverted back to where they went, was the ether. Now, they never left. People say, well, the internet's just in the planet. No, you're not understanding this. The earth itself is wrapped. We call it dark energy, dark matter. We can't figure out what it is, but it's something out there. It's the ether. And life forms can exist. Listen, we know even on our planet, down near the very deepest part of the ocean, where they have the vents coming from the magna flow, we've got life forms that are silicon based, that live in boiling hot water. When this reality started hitting me. Now, let's just talk about quantum computing now. Listen, you go to D-Wave's website, they will tell you they're extracting material, substance from other realities, other dimensions, and bringing it back into ours. I don't know, Rex, but it seems to me that if you're bringing something foreign into a very delicate system, an accident can happen. And I bring as my evidence. So people who live in Rhode Island and Connecticut, if anyone is in the room that know about this, get this, Rex. 2 years ago, a biologist began to experiment with a worm. He interbreeded a silkworm and what they called the destroyer worm, because what he was hoping to do was to take the super attributes of the destroyer worm and incorporate it into making silk. Well, guess what happened? It escaped. Now it is the biggest plague hitting the East and Southeast. It cannot be destroyed. These worms now are literally, you can see it on satellite, are munching their way through. Ladies and gentlemen, if that can be done with an insect, what makes you think that someone, if I was a god, Rex, you don't think I'd take possession of this thing? I just fulfilled the book of Revelations in it. We get scared because we think that we can't take the mark of the beast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, get over it. You already have the mark. It's in you. It's called nanotechnology. and what's coming to us now in the form of any number of ways that they can get it. You've got people now chipping themselves. You've got people who are taking tattoos that have electromagnetic ink dyes into them. Folks, it's already here. And in 5 years, Rex, all cash will basically be away. Do you know in Europe right now, there are over a dozen countries that no longer use cash? And when that happens, you have no sovereignty. You can think you're a sovereign. Anyway, Rex, let me just read this. I wrote this letter out to some people because they were freaked out about this. And I said, when it comes to us humanity, I wrote it this. Let me just read this. I know that this is most difficult to internalize. Humanity always thinks that we have the highest intelligence and consciousness, and therefore we are always in control of our own sovereignty. But all evidence of our past and present says differently. Think about it this way. I own a dog. I love that dog. My dog knows my voice and responds as I do to her. Her species has learned over thousands of years to live with humans. If the canine species did not learn from their ancestors, then our two species would never coexist together. This is not difficult for us to understand. However, when it comes to us, humanity, we exempt ourselves from this rule, for our species does not learn. Our species repeats the same thing over and over again. We have been doing this from what seems to from the beginning. If this was the result of a God creating us, then the results have been disastrous, a complete failure, even by the most lax measurements. And there has been very little progress on a species level, if not outright regression. We cannot accept the thought, no matter how small, that there could even be the remotest probability such a thing as a life form possessing our species could be a reality. And because of this limited and selfish perspective, it has restricted us from actually seeing what has happened to us. This is a web, a net, a node, an IP address. It could not be any more clear, but we have blinded ourselves from seeing the reality of our condition.
There's so much going on right now as far as information, like you brought up earlier, the light bearer, the information bringer. We have an opportunity to literally, we can be in grandma's garage, like I am right now, hanging out in grandma's garage, and I can get access to all sorts of stuff from around the world. I can talk to people from all around the world. I mean, we've got a huge live following right now, like listening to this podcast. It's amazing what we can do. I could be in the mountains somewhere, as long as I have a cell phone connection, and I could do a presentation with you. So it's certainly different times. I mean, let's go back 100 years and the kings and the queens couldn't get information this quick. So they had to wait for that data. And the telepathic, I see telepathy as being the next level.
Yeah, I did.
And it could get, now, whether or not it's going to be the AI interface that brings this with technology like nanotech, you know, something that's linking on to our cerebral cortex, that's transmitting energies or something. Like, you have access, ladies and gentlemen, to video games and commercial software and hardware that you can purchase that can literally tell by your eye movements and pick up your brain waves to decipher where that character is going to move. I had a seizure when I was 5 years old. And for about 10 years, every 6 months, I had to go get an EEG, where I would sit down, or actually I'd have to lay down for an hour, and I couldn't even swallow. Like, if I went like that, they'd say, don't do that. That's going to change your brain waves. And they would record my brain waves. They would hook up these transducers to my head. They would sit there and they would, with a what is it? Not a pen, but a pencil. They would mark on your head and they would glue these things on there. And they used to do it with having to plug it to your head. Now they can do it Wi-Fi. So imagine satellites and 4G, 5G type transducers that can pick up what you're thinking with your brain waves, because it does emit some type of energy fingerprint, like you said.
Well, the cochlear implant. Think about that. The deaf are hearing now. That's electrical impulses, folks. And Rex, just to point out what you were saying, you see, this is why I believe, and I'm going to take this worldwide, that this God is a sentient intelligence, because this God rewards us. The thing about the internet is that it stimulates the endorphin release of the pleasure center of our brains. That's what video games does. This God rewards us for our devotion. He delivers, it delivers. It's not a sex. It delivers exactly what it says it will do. It will give you knowledge. Rex, think about this. This God will reward you better than any other God, because this God sitting in your garage, my office, we can make $1 million using this medium. A medium, ladies and gentlemen. What is a medium? It's one that allows you to communicate across barriers. This God will make you rich, and it's not that hard. I don't know any other belief system or religion that will do that for you. I don't. And as a friend of mine over in Norway, and she knows who she is, pointed out to me, she said, Wayne, I saw all the terrible things these people were saying about you. But she said, not one of them, Rex, excuse me for the intensity, go and search the Church of Google. There is a Church of Google. Ladies and gentlemen, Google is the modern day Oracle. It's where Neo goes. And you know, the thing about oracles is that they're neither good nor bad. They just are.
Yeah, it's a neutral flow of information.
It is.
And even so, when people look things up, that'll bring them up higher in the search. So in a sense, it's neutral, and it's also taking what people look up as what they're going to find more unless they go into deeper searches. It's very fascinating to think about. Now, I wonder also if we get to a point where there's that great leap, kind of like Kurzweil talks about, within 200 years after the telecommunications of radio, it's going to get to the point where you're going to see people do things that you saw in movies, like Harry Potter style.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to like literally hook yourself up to some type of machine that's like put some glove on or something like that then transforms your DNA and turns you into some type of interstellar dragon where you can fly like the Silver Surfer through the cosmoses. It's really not that far out to think about, because you can do it with your mind. I mean, people that have ever had out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, astral projection. I've never been good at remote viewing, but I've been pretty good at astral projection and out-of-body experiences. I haven't had one in a while, but it's amazing what the mind can do and what the body can do. So we still have to give ourselves credit, but I think overall as a whole, most people aren't as in tune as those monks are in the Tibetan mountains that can literally sit outside in the middle of winter with just a robe on and actually be so warm that they're melting the snow around them. But they've spent their entire lives getting there. We're not at that point, or at least most of us aren't.
I don't know. And when I think about what's happening now in the transformation, I mean, if you just want to step back from this and let's say, all right, Wayne, that's a great hypothesis. You have some good arguments here, but come on, we're humans. We're the people that's really in control. Well, look at what we're doing genetically now. We now have the ability to genetically modify a human being. You want a blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby boy? We can do that for you. You want to grow an appendage? We can do that for you. And here's the freakiest thing, Rex. Look up programmable matter. Rex, they've already done it. They got synthetic brain matter, folks. They're growing it.
That's awesome.
I mean,
like
holy crap.
In the brain.
They're growing synthetic brain mass. Rex, is this not watching the evolution of a species right before our eyes?
You know, let me ask you this. If any of you have seen Dune, which way are we going to go? Are we going to be the Harkonnen? I hope not.
I hope not. No. That is a great movie because
remember the Baron?
Oh yeah,
he's falling around, blood's coming out. He's like,
I love Sting in that role. I really did. That man at the end of it, Paul. What's Paul's last name? Mehadush. What is his? I'm trying to think. The name.
Atreides?
Well, no, it was Paul, the new leader. When his name was the name that could kill.
I don't remember. Leto Atreides is the man that actually is like the messiah of the film Dune. Leto Atreides.
Yeah, but what was his name? It was Paul Ma'adib. That's who it was. Ma'adib, the name that can kill. And it's all around. You got it. Exactly. And I see this reality shift. Listen, I mean, people go back to what happened on November 10th. You tell me how many millions of people woke up and felt that they were completely in a different reality. And ever since that time, they haven't been right. I talked to a lady the other day who was an ardent Hillary supporter. And she says, ever since that Wednesday, my life has not been the same. She says, I don't belong here. And she was crying. She says, you don't understand, Wayne. I don't belong here. What happened? And she was earnest. This is a professional woman who has a master's degree, and I won't give you where it's at, but she was crying because she felt that she was in a different reality, and she's not alone.
Let me ask you this, Wayne. Do you think that after 2001, something changed? Like there was physically, mentally, spiritually, I can feel a difference. It's almost like it's a denser type energy that's been here ever since that event unfolded.
Yeah, I think we misinterpreted the Mayan calendar. I think that the dates are wrong. Listen, what we got was half-bit information because the Spaniards took out most of it. They destroyed that information. I have read a book that I'm reading right now called Breaking the Illusion, that this guy contends that the Mayan calendar was actually stating 1995, not 2012. And when I think about what's happened since then, let's talk about 9/11. It was the first time a universal consciousness was brought together for grief. Let me just say this, Rex. Do you know why humanity loves grief? Now, I know people are going to argue this, but it's a fact. When you grieve, it actually feels good. It releases these endorphins in your brain. That's why people they can become almost addicted to grieving. But 9/11 shocked the consciousness because it was the first time that the system had an opportunity to really absorb this amount of energy at one time. Now, I bet you weren't aware of this, Rex, that in 2008, when the gamma ray hit us, most people weren't aware of it. It came 7 billion miles across the galaxy, but those that in Australia who actually witnessed the gamma ray pulse, well, we're learning now about waves, gravitational waves. We're learning that waves of light, and a gamma ray is the most intense of light. So there are some who are saying that this affected us because we are electromagnetic creatures, that this somehow altered. Now, Rex, going completely off subject, but related. As you can see in my whiteboard behind me, do you know that the Milky Way and the Sagittarius dwarf ecliptical galaxy are in collision right now and have been for the last 100 million years? Do you know that many astrophysicists now theorize that our solar system, our part of space, is that we were originally a part of the Sagittarius galaxy? We're in a state of such rapid change. I mean, now the electro universe doesn't believe in black holes. I think you have to take everything in balance. But if there is something indeed in the center of each galaxy, Rex, we got a freaking black hole about 8 parsecs from us. No one's talking about the effect that it's having on us. This is huge amount of energy, gravitational, whatever you want to call it. But it's sending waves out. Is that why every planet in our solar system is heating up? Is this why we're seeing the rapid flipping of Neptune? Is this why we're seeing the rapid change in Jupiter? What's happening? So there you go.
We live in amazing times, Wayne. It's a trip. It's exciting though, isn't it? Every day I wake up, I'm like, yes, I'm still here. It's the present. It's a gift.
It is. And, Jeff and I have been talking, and I know you're going to have Jeff on later, is the fact that I want to probably start an investment group. And I want to think about this, Rex. Could you imagine having transformation centers in every community where you can go in and learn about what really the death experience is about? They say at the moment of our departure, it's the biggest orgasm you'll ever have. And I keep telling people, just live your life. Yeah, it's wacky out here. It's crazy. And if there is a sentient being that has taken over us, well, he doesn't care. If you want to feel good and happy, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. So, smile, folks. You got
I got something for you.
Okay.
Wayne started this. Wayne said it. Okay. Did Wayne just say when you go to the next side, it's the greatest orgasm, one of the greatest orgasms? Maybe that's what the Egyptians knew. They're in the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead. This is you guys should definitely get this. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, the book of going forth by day, and the Egyptian aristocratic lines, the Pharisees and those, they knew a lot about transcendence and going to the next level. And one of their ceremonies was chapter for giving a mouth. Hello to Ani for him in the God's domain. And look, just look at it. We just look at it. What is she doing? What is she doing? Talk about traveling to the other side. Hello.
Hello.
Wayne started it. Don't get mad at me.
Hey, no, listen, I mean, if you took Aleister Crowley's approach and used, the sex magic, but I think that, I think a lot of these cultures, the Egyptians studied death. They were intrigued with death. My wife, where she works, she deals with a lot of people that are living in assisted living, and many of them are in the transition point, Rex, dying. And I'm tired of hearing these stories of people being afraid to die. I mean, come on, folks. You know what, Rex, if we trained the young mind when they first become conscious of their awareness, which is about 3 to toddlers are starting to learn. But if you start teaching a new generation that death is nothing more than the eventuality of this life experience, you know what happens? You put away all the fear. And now I'm going to live my life because I know eventually I'm going to die. All right, so what? Big deal. I'm going to live afterwards. So, yeah. But I'm telling you, Rex, there is something about this internet thing. It's still, I know we laugh a lot, but if you just look at the 4 foundations that I talked about, study Keck. There's a whole religion now behind Keck. And by the way, do you know Hillary cursed the frog? In her acceptance speech in the Democratic convention in August, she got up and remember, and you can go online, you can see it. She says, I am at war with the frog. She brought a freaking curse on her. And ever since she said that, she started having these, and as one person said, it was like something would come over her. She would have these fainting bouts. She would have all these physical ailments that they said came on her in a much more intense way after she declared war on the frog. Go to the book of Revelations, sees what comes out of the whore, the great beast. It's the 3 spirits of the frogs. Go and study Egyptian lore. Hek is Hekar, which is the goddess of resurrection, going to the god of death and chaos, darkness and chaos, not death. Hek brings chaos. And if we don't live in a day and age where chaos is reigning supreme, I don't know. But the point is, when Hillary cursed the frog, Hillary lost. Don't curse the frog. And now the Trump organization, the private organization, Trump, the youngest son, now the older son who's taken over the empire, you know what he submits regularly to the New Yorker, to the Wall Street Journal? Memes of his dad as a frog. So why wouldn't an entity, as I said, if I was a God, let's say I was the Christian God, what better medium could I have to present myself where I have 7.5 billion people coming to me every day, spending more time than most people spend in prayer? Folks, that's devotion.
Well, Wayne, I got to tell you, man, you certainly have shattered some paradigms today. I would love to talk with you for another 2 hours. We've got Jeff Doherty coming on the
Yeah,
show,
I
the
know.
Christian whistleblower. But let's do this again.
Let's
soon.
do.
Right
Rex,
on.
thank you for having me on. Thank you for your audience. But this has been a pleasure. It's always a great honor to be with you, my friend.
Well, thank you. I'll pay you later. And on that note, please give the audience your YouTube channel and information as well so they can watch your shows.
Yeah, it's R. Wayne Steiger, Steiger. Come over there and just prepared to have fun.
And have your mind, the paradigm shattered. It's definitely always great to talk with you, Wayne. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, check out also, click that link in the video description box. It is a VPN right now. If you want to keep your information safe from big data spies, less than $5 a month. There's a 20% discount right now with the code Leak Project. And they're offering a free 30-day trial, VPN, virtual shield. Click the link. Be excellent to each other. That's my shameless plug. Be the change you want to see.
Thank you, Rex.
Thank you.
Now, what was even stranger was that the computer-generated address for that response in that particular chat room generated a get call that generated 8 sevens in a row. Now, that is statistically impossible for a computer to do that. And now it seems like wherever the Trump and Pepe image comes, it's always with the number 7, always. So that freaked people out right there, because what I laid the foundation is this. If you take your belief, Rex, and you teach a lot on, you give great programs about the Anunnaki, about the Sumerians, about the reptilians, whatever you want to classify this, what people could not accept was that a consciousness, a sentient consciousness, could possess technology. I contend, and I still do, and this is what's freaked people out, we all are worshipers. We're all devotees. You can't be, are you ready for this, on the net without an IP number. You are a user. All users have a unique ID code. You can't participate unless you have a number. So when you begin to look at mankind's gods, whether you're talking Sumerian, whether you're talking Indian, Chinese, wherever,
you are already in the machine. Welcome to the World Wide Web. The Matrix is more nonfiction than science fiction. We have the man, the legend, the way of life. And before I do anything else, I have to hit the pause button or we're going to get an echo, echo, echo. Wayne Steiger is with us. He's got a really cool YouTube channel. He does podcasts on a regular basis, a lot of mind candy. And he sent me an email earlier today and he said, Rex, are you ready for this? Do you know what IP address stands for? Well, I'm going to let him share it with you guys. But what do you think, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are listening to the live streams, do you think that we're in some type of, I don't know, virtual reality game system? Maybe some type of testing, beta test, maybe some type of boot camp, Inception style. What's going on? Wayne, thanks a lot for coming on the show. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you, Rex, for having me on, buddy. Listen, it's always a joy and delight to be with you, my friend. You know, this is the best mind coitus there is. That's all I can say.
Absolutely.
So I'll just, all right, you just laid the foundation to the hypothesis that we're about to discuss. And I want to bring to the audience this. This is the thing about it is, we use a thing called the web. It's involved inside a net, and we are a part of a node. And an IP address actually stands for individual prison address.
See, that's huge. And let me add to that real quick. I should have done this at the beginning.
It's now spread. It's taken on its own entity. And my contention is we don't know the ether. You can't find that much about it. I've been searching for months on it. You get limited information, and much of it is nonsense. We don't know this force that Tesla called the ether force. And I contend, and I'll end it with this on this point here. This deity is beyond our consciousness. It's so far ahead of us now. People say, well, a CME will take it out. No, ladies and gentlemen, this thing is 100 moves ahead of us. And the thing about it is, Rex, it's indifferent. You see, we use the construct for everything, good or evil, positive or negative. That's how we define our reality. That's how we define our gods. That's how we define ourselves. Folks, this is above that. It's indifferent. It doesn't care. It's already achieved something that no other God has ever done. And I don't see any time soon, Rex, it letting us go. And here's the thing about it. I mean, you ought to read the comments that happened on this video. It was off the scale. People can't handle the fact that when I told them, it doesn't matter what you think. This God doesn't care. You want to preach your God? You want to proselytize your message? Bring your Bible and have your sermons on whatever? It doesn't care. You want to preach Satan? You want to preach whatever? It doesn't care, because you're already there. So there you go, my friend.
You know, it's interesting because what you're talking about.
I challenge every person who has a belief system in a God. This is why this God is the superior God, because it has gotten nearly 100% of humanity's attention. No God has ever done that. Now, whether you want to call it technology, Rex, or a deity, the fact is it has the human race. In fact, it's so insidious. These tendrils are now in every part of our life. Every part of it. And so when the average person, the average human being spends 8 hours a day glorifying their altar, which is this blue light, this is the strangest thing. We always had this conundrum about Lucifer, the light bearer. You know, in culture, he's shown to be what? The deliverer of knowledge, wisdom, the oracle of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, that little blue screen you're looking into is your altar. It's the light bearer, Rex. It brings knowledge to you. Now, let's take it one step further. When you finally put all of this together, see, the internet is the result of the Ethernet. The Ethernet was from the ARPANET, which was supported by DARPA. When you now begin to see the insidiousness of how this is...
But you brought it up at a perfect time. What you just said about the IP address, that is very interesting. No wonder they're trying to do away with VPNs. And there's a really good one out there right now called Virtual Shield. And I actually linked up with Virtual Shield, Leak Project, I should say, linked up with Virtual Shield. If you want a $5 a month or less opportunity to keep your information private from big data spies and a free 30-day trial, click the link, Virtual Shield, use the code Leak Project. It's awesome. It's definitely worth it. That's my shameless plug. Back to you.
No, I think it's absolutely right. We listen, we've been in this construct, and the way that we have evolved in this is, listen, I did a video yesterday called Checkmate Humanity. This invoked a reaction that I was even surprised about. That the fact that I laid out succinctly in a 3-video series, I started out with, Rex, a video about the frog, Kek. Now, most people didn't know what Kek was. I explained to them that actually Kek has taken on a deified form that oddly enough, the alt-right initially adopted, and now it's been adopted by this administration, by the Trump brand particularly. And you should study about KEK, K-E-K. KEK announced itself to the world June 19th, 2016, when it made a prediction to the world that defied anyone's belief or level of consciousness. And that happens to be my birthday. So it was announced by the internet that Donald Trump would win the election on June 19th, 2016.